Have you ever been called crazy by someone who was clearly just mad you figured out who they were too fast? Do you ever wonder if you're really too much or if you've just become too aware? Like maybe they're not overwhelmed by your emotions, they're overwhelmed by the way you called things out that they're still trying to ignore or something they thought that they were getting away with. If you've ever been told you're intense, dramatic, too sensitive, exhausting, or crazy, this one's for you. Hey everyone, welcome back to Chasing Stability, a podcast for the in-between. I'm Mackenzie, and this episode is for the girls who knew, who saw the shift before the story changed, who got told they were overreacting when they were actually spot on. A certain little phrase that I know so many of us have been told in some form or another: you're too much, you care too much, you feel too deeply, you analyze too hard, you read into too much, you're always in something. So why do women who express their emotions or concerns get labeled as dramatic? And why is emotional awareness too threatening in modern day relationships? When people are telling us we're too much, are we actually, or are they just not ready to be honest or held accountable? So if you've asked questions that made people uncomfortable or noticed a shift in the room, a change of a tone, the pause before the answer, or even the details that just don't quite add up, grab your coffee or your water or maybe even some wine. And let's talk about how being labeled too much is actually just a deflection tactic from people who weren't ready for your level of perception. Let's all be real with ourselves for a minute. We all know when a man says a woman is too much, what he often means is she asked for more than he wanted to give, right? And that if he's throwing around too emotional, it usually means she just asked for some kind of clarity. Too needy means she expected consistency, and too sensitive or crazy means he didn't want to take responsibility for how his words landed. Like, this is a universal lesson that we as women have all learned by now, right? We might fall for the "my ex is crazy" card once, but I doubt we'll ever fall for it again after he leaves you feeling exactly like the last girl. These labels aren't about who we are. It's about what they couldn't handle. Men don't know how to say, or they just don't want to admit that they're not emotionally mature enough for this type of conversation, or the men that I'm talking about today, not all men. So instead, they say, you're doing too much. It's a redirection to make you the problem and not them. And I realize that women can do this too. It's just that I only date men, so that's my perspective. It's shame covered up by criticism. But then you take on that label as truth, like most of us have before. You know what happens, right? We shrink. You start to question your needs instead of the lack of care being shown to you. And that's how a lot of women end up begging for crumbs in rooms they should have walked out of a long time before. I know the feeling when you start to feel like everything you're asking for is too much. You start to actually believe your needs don't matter. I once lived with a guy who didn't pay rent at all. And every time I tried to bring it up, we'd get in a fight about it. During that time, I actually stopped bringing it up because I just didn't want to hear the excuses and fight about it anymore. But looking back now, it was an accountability thing and shame. He didn't like talking about it because he felt shame around it, and he didn't like that it probably made him feel like less of a man, or he was just using me until I got a clue. Either way, if I would have been more focused on my needs and what I wanted from him instead of just making sure he didn't leave and call me crazy and whatever, I would have never been in the situation in the first place because I would have had more respect for myself. Because here's the thing about these situations we get ourselves in and put up with. We've all been through stuff. And a lot of what we hold on to and put up with has a lot to do with what we got hurt over before. So we look for it. We've all seen what lies look like, and we've all experienced a moment when we felt we could trust somebody, but really they should have never been trusted at all. This created something like an identity card for the actions that were demonstrated by the person we thought we could trust. So when those cards pop up and feel familiar, we start to question if this is true or could it be another lie. You're not paranoid for using your past to steer you to not live the same mistakes you lived before. You're informed. You're not jumping to conclusions about it. You're just recognizing a pattern you've already seen before. But then there's the other side of this, where we don't want to believe the identity card that's flashing in our brains. We basically gaslight ourselves to believe we're being paranoid because we don't want to seem like the jealous one or the clingy one. We doubt ourselves to keep what we think we want. Meanwhile, our mind is screaming, bitch, run. You've seen the end of this movie before. Being aware and picking up on the stuff most people ignore or just don't see at all isn't always fun. It can be heartbreaking and defeating, especially if you're finding out that someone you like is just not the image that they portrayed to you. I remember one time the guy I was seeing and I were at dinner, and our waitress came over and addressed him by name and asked if he wanted his favorite drink. My spidey senses immediately shot up, and I was watching their interactions. I made some comment like, wow, you must come here a lot for her to know your drink order. And he brushed me off and tried to make me feel like I shouldn't even have said that, and told me that he just came here a lot to watch games. I knew then they had hooked up. I could tell by the lie, but I let me convince me otherwise. The conversation ruined dinner, of course, because I was sarcastic and definitely pissed. But after we left, I let the sweet words turn off my siren going off in my head. Later that year, after we had already ended things, a friend of a friend of a friend, you know the deal, I was told she did hook up with him, and they had hooked up when I met her at that restaurant, and she had come over and done that to make a point. Moral of the story, listen to your damn gut. If your body is having actual reactions, you know you're being lied to. Stand up for yourself and leave. Staying and screaming about how you were disrespected isn't going to do anything, because either they don't care or don't think they did anything wrong. You're not going to change them either way in either of those scenarios. And the longer you stay and fight about it all the time, you're just setting yourself up to get that really fun label that guys give their ex when all they've asked for was respect. And that brings us to the classic old reliable label, the crazy ex. It's the easiest way for someone to avoid admitting they hurt someone. She was just nuts is often a code for she found out. And we hear it so much, we start to believe that when a woman finally snaps, it's her fault. But sometimes that snap is the sound of a boundary finally being crushed for the final time. You ever get tired of seeing the girl who asks too many questions get painted as unstable? Or the one who cried in the bathroom because she saw him flirting in front of her get turned into a villain in his next relationship? The crazy ex label isn't just lazy, it's weaponized. It's used to discredit any truth she holds. It's a way to dodge accountability and plant doubt. But here's what they don't say. If your ex calls you crazy, it probably means he's the crazy one. And if people have been there, they'll know the signs or they'll learn the hard way. Let them figure it out. You owe them no explanation. So many of us have been called crazy so many times, it's almost comical. But discernment is your superpower. It's that gut feeling that saves you from wasting your time. The vibe you can't quite explain, but just know is off. It's a skill sharpened by experience, failure, betrayal, and all of that healing that you did after it. And the thing is, people who aren't ready for truth find that discernment terrifying. But your ability to see things clearly, it's not something to hide. It weeds people out faster. You stop entertaining emotionally unavailable people because you can sense their walls before you even speak. You stop making excuses for love that makes you anxious. You stop dulling down your emotions that make people able to digest you. You stop giving passes to bare minimum behavior. Discernment will shrink your dating pool, of course, sure, but it will also protect your peace. And that's worth more than another stupid situationship. Can I get an amen? It's funny because right when I said that, in my mind, I jumped to one of my favorite movies, Bride Wars. It's the one with Kate Hudson and Anne Hathaway, and they're like best friends and they duke it out, whatever. But anyways, it reminded me of this scene where Emma, who's played by Anne Hathaway, gets in a fight with her fiance, and he says something like, "You're tense and moody and all over the place and you need to cut it out." And she realizes that he doesn't like her when she's having these big feelings, that he likes her better when she's subdued and a pushover. This is the discernment I'm talking about right here. If she would have opened her eyes in this moment, or there were probably 17 more beforehand, it's a movie, but she wouldn't have had to walk down the aisle and get to all these extra places. She would have realized that she needed to step away. But then again, that wouldn't make the great movie that Bride's Wars is. Anyways, but when you see things clearly, it allows you to stand up for yourself. You're able to hold on to exactly what you want and not have to play the, "Oh, does he like me" game. Honey, who cares? Do you even like him? What do you like about him? When I was younger, I was always a little timid when it came to saying the things I truly thought or felt. Like if I said something too in my feelings, people would leave. But the thing I've learned now is people respect people who know what they want and take nothing less. And if someone is intimidated by those actions or your personality, they aren't for you. They don't see your worth. That's too bad for them, right? Because if they are able to be that turned off by your energy, they no longer get access to it anyway. Okay, goodbye. Stop worrying about if this guy is going to like you, and respect yourself. Trust me, I have walked this road 1,000 times. You're gonna get more satisfaction out of respecting yourself than doing this shit again with another loser guy who doesn't even really appreciate you in the beginning anyway. Grow in loving yourself so you can raise your standards. You were never meant to ignore what God made you aware of, right? That heaviness you feel when something's off, that's not anxiety, that's discernment. That's God speaking literally directly to you. He's telling you it's not right and to stop accepting less than what you deserve. Do you think God would want you to lose your self-worth for a man, or anyone for that matter? No, but we're going to dive more into that at a later time. Anyways, a lot of times we pray for signs and red flags and confirmation, but we ignore it when it doesn't come in the package that we planned for it to come in. How human of us. God isn't trying to ruin your love life, so take it easy. He's trying to protect your heart. He gave you eyes to see, not just the surface stuff, but what lives underneath. And when something doesn't sit right in your soul, That's not paranoia. That's protection. You probably should listen to it. You're not difficult. You're discerning. And when you start treating your awareness as a gift instead of a flaw, everything changes. I have this really weird moment in the last 2 relationships I've been in that I remember so precisely. They were identical to the point where it kind of is still freaky to me to think about. But it was one of those weeks in both of the relationships where the tensions had gotten to the ultimate high. You know, the point where you're fighting all the time, it's constant. Everything feels like anything can cause the turmoil to just like implode. I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and I had this energy feeling thing that even though the boyfriends at the time were laying next to me, I felt like the bed had spread a mile wide. And it felt like my body was so heavy that I was like sinking into the bed. And maybe someone else in this world has ever felt like that. I don't know. But to me, it felt like a sign it was over. And both of those relationships ended pretty close after each of these instances. I remember feeling like they hated me in that moment so much because it felt like there was so much space in difference of opinions. But sometimes people don't hate you. They hate what you reflect back to them and vice versa. You ever notice how the more honest and aware you are, the more people get uncomfortable? That's because when you're self-aware, you expose who's not. When you're emotionally mature, you highlight who's still avoiding their wounds. In dating, this shows up super fast. The more in tune you are, the faster people lean in or tap out. You become a mirror they weren't really ready for. You make them feel things they've buried. And rather than face it, they try to blame you for making them feel seen and try to get away from the situation. But that's not your burden to bear. You're not here to make everyone comfortable. You're here to be real. And if that makes someone flinch, that's not your problem. We all grow into this level of self-awareness at our own pace. I'm still growing, hence the name of my podcast. But there was a time in my life where this guy who was older than me and didn't go to my school, he was from a different part of the state, but he was extremely self-aware of himself at 19 and was totally in love with me. And I was in love with him too, but I also was 17 and totally lost to who I was. I thought I knew, but looking back now, I can see that his self-awareness scared the shit out of me. It made me see who I wasn't and made me run away. In that situation now, it would have made me want to rise to the challenge because I'm more accommodated with it, right? But then I bolted. I crushed him and tried to make it his fault. Like I 100% threw out like the most common phrases, like you're being too much and it's just a lot right now. But really, it wasn't that he was being too much. It's that I just wasn't capable of meeting him at that level during that time of my life. It's like that infamous one-liner that we all know so well now, you know, if I'm too much, go find less. I wish I knew then what I know now, because I wouldn't have let him go so easy. Because if there is one thing for sure, if you're shouting out to someone that they're too much, the only thing that you're going to find is less. And that's never going to be better. You weren't made to be small. You weren't built to dim your light for someone else's comfort. Your depth, your questions, your desire for honesty, those aren't weakness, they're filters. You're not too much. You're just not for the emotional lazy or the underdeveloped relationship type. You're not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong people. And the minute someone says you're too much, what they're really saying is, I'm not ready for what you bring to the table. So say goodbye. You don't need to be less. You just need someone different. And just like me as the little 17-year-old girl, that person doesn't get another chance. They fumbled you because they thought you were too much. Good riddance and so long. You're not hard to love. You're just not easy to fool. You're not difficult. You're discerning. You're not broken. You're built different. Keep asking questions. Keep noticing things. Keep being the one who pays attention, even if it makes people uncomfortable. Because the truth is, your awareness isn't the problem, it's the protection. And in love, you're not too much for the right person. You're the exact amount for someone who's done hiding. And with that, I'm signing off. Thank you so much for listening today. I appreciate it more than you know. This little community is helping me grow, and I hope it's going to do the same for all of you, one step at a time. So please help by sharing the podcast with the people you know would love to hear it or just need to hear it. And maybe give us a follow or a comment in the comment section. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. This is Chasing Stability, and I'll meet you in the in-between next Tuesday.